So, just to get started, for those of you who haven't met me or seen me in any Hub material so far, my name is Cara Leith, and I am the Hub Advisor for Electrical, Computer and Systems, and Materials Engineering. So, for the program tonight, second semester Jumpstart, the main thing we're going to be talking about is taking a strategic look at the spring semester and really trying to make a plan for success. So, for some people, fall semester might have been a strong start, but you want to maybe see how to be more efficient with your time or how to build upon that success. And for other people, fall semester might have been a bit more of a bumpy start. That's really common as well. And this can be a way to kind of think long term about ways we can do better now and build towards a strong future. So, in talking about those things, we're going to talk about four main topics. So the first thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about how GPA works. So many people coming out of high school came from high schools that didn't use the 4.0 scale that we have here. I know that was the case for me. My school did everything out of 100. So just kind of like an exam, you have a 95 in the class, you have an A. So we're going to talk a little bit about just the straight, pure formula behind GPA and also how to contextualize it both here and in your future endeavors. Then we're also going to talk about some advising tips. So obviously, coming from your Hub advisors, there are some different tips and tricks we have so that if you want to either protect a GPA that's already strong or potentially save your GPA, we have a couple different things we can do depending on the circumstance that you might not already be aware of. So we're going to cover that as well. Then we're going to jump onto campus resources. I'm going to try to keep that piece relatively brief because if you've been reading your hidden curriculum episodes, then you'll probably have already read a lot about these, but never hurts to quickly run them down. And last but not least, we'll be doing an organization demonstration. So a really common theme we heard last semester as Hub advisors was that a lot of times, sometimes the struggle in a class wasn't just about like how hard it was, though obviously that certainly happens, but especially with some of the courses with more online components, we heard a lot being said about, I have to sign in to 6 different websites to try to watch lectures, submit assignments, or even just on a general level, it's like, all right, I have to do lab reports, homeworks, tests, quizzes, and it's really easy to let something slip by the wayside. So we're going to go through some free tools that you can use if you need a couple ideas on how to jumpstart your organization. So first, I kind of want to set the tone for the GPA conversation. So this number on the screen, 3.87, that is the average high school GPA of students accepted to RPI in fall 2018. So there's a couple of assumptions inherent in this, right? So first of all, just for context, a 3.87 is kind of smack in the middle between an A- and an A on the 4.0 scale there. So what does that really mean? So first of all, it means most RPI students coming out of high school had really high GPAs, had things in this range, maybe a 4.0. And so that's the standard you're used to for yourself, maybe for your peers. And sometimes we hear things like, hey, I was getting those grades and, you know, it wasn't even all that hard then. And then another thing inherent in this is that this was the standard to get to a place like RPI, right? So if this is the average accepted thing, you were kind of told over and over again, you need to have all A's or mostly A's to get into a competitive college. So when you arrive here, a lot of people assume this is still the standard. Like, this is what I have to hold myself to in order to be successful in whatever comes next, whether that's graduate school or a job. And I want to reframe that a little bit to talk about maybe where the expectations should be as opposed to where they may be. So this number, for context, when you go to our Career Center, which I highly recommend everybody does at least once in their first year if you haven't already, they can help you with your resume. And a resume is a document that is meant to showcase all of the parts of you that are worth bragging about. They say that the threshold where you should put your GPA on a resume and tell your employer about it is a 2.75. That is just above a C+ average. So obviously, most students are going to try to aim a little bit higher than this, but when we're thinking about like what is a good GPA these days, now that you're in college, now that you're an engineering student, this is the minimum that you're going to want to put it on your resume. And then oftentimes what we'll see just through students applying to internships and whatnot, some places will say that they want to see a 3.0. That's probably the most common, like if they're going to call out a GPA they want to see in like an internship posting, that's usually what they call out. That is a flat, like that is just a B average. Then if you're going for like some of the more high caliber graduate programs, going for some of the really competitive companies, then you'll sometimes see the 3.5 thrown out as the target, which is basically if you got 50% A grades and 50% B grades. So I say all this to really just try to reframe that the high school standard that you're used to at GPA, it truly is a different standard now. So when you're thinking about your own GPA, whether positive or negative, I want to make sure that it's kind of couched in realistic expectations and in the sense of where things are going to go from here. So now onto the logistics. How does GPA even work? So you guys get equations in so many classes, so here is another one. So the equation to calculate your GPA is quality points divided by credit hours. So how do we find out how many quality points we have? There is a key here, and this is basically just pulled from RPI's website, and this shows you how many quality points you get based on a certain letter grade. So obviously an A, which is the highest we go here, is a 4.0, a B is a 3, C is a 2, and obviously there's plenty of variance within that. So if you take a class, the way to find out how many quality points you have is to multiply whatever the correct number is based on this chart by the number of credits. So let's say I took Chem 1100 and I got a B. I'm going to say 3 for the quality points times the 4 credits for the class equals 12 quality points overall. So when you look at your transcript in SIS, every semester what it does is it totals up those quality points for every class and then divides it by how many credits you took that semester. So for most of us, probably about 16 credits. So that equals your GPA. Now, again, there are a couple things we can infer based on this formula. So first thing is that courses that have more credits carry more weight. So a 4-credit class like your Haas class or biology is going to have a higher impact on your GPA than maybe your 1-credit CAD or engineering processes class. Also, early on, every grade hits like a truck. So again, if we think about this in context, let's say you got an F in a class first semester and you were taking 16 credits. That F, if it was a 4-credit class, is accounting for 25% of your total GPA, which obviously is going to have some shock value. But even if we just take it out one more semester, we get through spring, we take another 16 credits, now your cumulative GPA at the end of the spring, that F grade is now only 1/8. The effect has been halved in one semester. So a lot of students in their first semester will either feel like they've got this forever because their GPA is quite high, or on the flip side, they'll think, oh gosh, this is really low and like there's nothing I can do about this. Like this is not recoverable. And that's just simply not true. As you go along and accumulate more credits, that denominator grows and the individual impact of each class goes down. So basically, one good class is not going to like save or make your GPA, but one bad class is not going to break it either. So we're going to run through a little bit of a projection together on the next slide, but I did want to drop this link. So basically, if you want to run a couple of projections for yourself, so let's say you want to look at your fall GPA and be like, all right, I have this target GPA in my mind for spring. What do I need to get there? Then gpacalculator.io, great, free, and easy to use. So in lieu of doing that live, let's do one that's already typed out. So this example is kind of aimed at showing how a GPA can rise. So first, let's start in the fall semester. Nothing too catastrophic, no failed courses, but also nothing in the A range, which again, many, if not all, RPI students are used to experiencing to some extent in high school. So at the end of the fall, if this were my group of classes and my grades, we'd be at a 2.17. So again, certainly not catastrophic, but also most of us are generally going to aim a little bit higher than that as our goal, right? So moving on to the spring, now we've got a little bit of an upward trend. So maybe we're going to tutoring, we got our time management under control, and now we got everything in the B range. So we haven't even touched the A range yet. It's not like we've suddenly made miracles happen or straight A student. And already in one semester, we've made a half-point jump, roughly, which is really big on the GPA scale. Then we'll take it over to the fall here, and by fall semester now, you've had a whole year to practice, you're really rocking and rolling, and again, we've got 1A, which is great, and then some higher grades here, but again, we're not aiming for that 4.0 to bring everything up, and just in those 3 semesters, we've risen about 0.8, and we still have 5 semesters to go. So if you were to project out from here and average a 3.5 for your last 5 semesters, which again, that's 50% A's, 50% B's, and obviously there can be some variance in that. People certainly get lower and can still come out with a 3.5 depending on the skew overall. But if you were to do that, you would graduate with a 3.3 after starting at a 2.17. And again, you did not have to suddenly become a perfect straight A student to get there. So really just, again, as we go along, GPA early on looks very severe in all the movements. It will calm down over time. All right, now let's talk about some of the advising tips. So first and foremost, shameless plug, actually meet with your advisor. So just to give you all context, everyone in the hub has been advising for several years. I am the youngest, like the baby of the hub, and this is my 3rd engineering class I'm advising. So every single hub advisor has talked to literally hundreds of students in your major. So when you're planning your schedule, we can really help offer perspectives on classes that go together well or go together terribly. So that can help if you're already doing well, then we can protect that GPA by making sure you don't sign up for a rough semester, or just making sure that you spread some of the easy stuff out so you can maintain that balance. And also, if you have a rougher start with your GPA, then we can also kind of try to put together an easier semester to kind of get everything situated. And then again, adjust from there to make sure that you won't have anything too challenging that lies ahead. So bare minimum, meet with your advisor. Then within that, there are a couple different tricks we can use depending on the situation. So one is know the drop deadline. So some of you might have gone through this in the fall, but basically the drop deadline at RPI is it's easily the most generous policy I've seen from any college I've worked at. If you drop a class by the drop deadline, which this spring is going to be March 12th, about 8 weeks into the semester, the class will not show up on your transcript at all. Like, I could print out your transcript. There is no proof you were ever in the class once it's dropped. So this can be used really strategically in a couple of ways. So obviously the main reason people will usually drop a course is because it isn't going well. But A, that could be used on the lower end of things GPA-wise, just to kind of do a little bit of damage control. But also, this can be a way to sort of reach for the stars. So let's say you took a standard 16 credit load in your fall semester and it went well, and you're like, you know what? I want to overload. I want to try to take 20 credits, but I'm kind of nervous about how that will go. The drop deadline kind of makes that a low-risk decision because you have those 8 weeks to try it out. And if it feels like too much, then just cut and run, and it's no big deal. Now, some drops are more impactful than others. So this is something we always recommend talking to your hub advisor about, because some classes, like if it's an elective or something like that, odds are good you could probably drop it with really no need to retool your schedule or worry about much. But if you're in a place where you really might need to drop a major class, like maybe something like Calculus 2, or like for some of my majors, computer science would probably be one that we'd need to have a conversation about. You just want to make sure you know the full ramifications of what you're planning to do. Last thing I'll say about dropping a class is to pay attention to your credit hours as well. So 12 credits is the minimum amount you need to be full-time, which you pretty 99.9% of the time want to be, because that has implications for financial aid, on-campus housing, all of that stuff. So if you're looking to drop something, again, make sure that that would not bring you below 12 credits, because we don't want to cause any problems. Then moving along, there's another trick here we have, which is repeating a class. Now, again, this is something where RPI's policy is pretty generous in that if you take a class for a second time here, your new grade completely replaces your old grade in your cumulative GPA. So to kind of illustrate what that would mean, let's say I failed Calc 1 in my first semester and retook it in the second semester and I got a B. If I go at the end of my RPI experience, write up a resume, everything, that official GPA that RPI would stand behind that I can tell employers would look like I had only ever gotten a B in the class. So this can do amazing things for repairing a GPA. Now, you don't have to have failed a class to do this. You can retake a B if you really want to. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. But something to keep in mind too, a couple little details. So one is when you retake a class, the second grade replaces your first grade no matter what. So we have seen instances where students go to retake the class, but then don't really take it very seriously because they just assume, oh, second time through it'll be easy. And then they do worse. Yeah, that second grade, even if it's worse, will still replace the first. So make sure if you repeat something that you're definitely prioritizing it and taking it seriously. It's also important to mention the retake policy with the grade replacement only happens if you retake the class here. So if you failed a class and you're like, okay, you know what? It's just way too hard at RPI. I'm going to go take it at my local community college over the summer. You are allowed to do that in terms of getting credit for the course, but your grade from the other school will not transfer over here. So 9 times out of 10, we always recommend that if you're going to repeat a class, do it here so you can get that GPA benefit. Last but not least, which happens a little less often, is you could see if a pass no credit could help. So just in case that's not a familiar concept, pass no credit is RPI's kinder version of pass fail. So if you pass the class, which is a D or better on the letter grade scale, then your transcript's going to show a P and you'll get the 4 credits. So it won't bring your GPA up, won't bring your GPA down. You just get the credit and you're good. If you fail, instead of getting an F, which obviously has a negative impact on GPA, no credit would just show NC. You obviously won't get credit for a class that you didn't pass, but it has no negative GPA impact. So this is limited in what we can use it on. The only courses that you can officially use it on are your free electives and within some specific parameters in Haas. You're not allowed to use it in your integrative pathway, and you're not allowed to use it on your comm intensive, but oftentimes you'll have 1 or 2 classes that fall outside of those requirements. So the one tricky situation that we can sometimes make work, depending on the situation, is if you are in a class that's not going well. So I'll use a common one I see every year as the computer and systems advisor. Every year I have computer and systems students who start data structures, which I am sure many of you have heard the stories of data structures. And once they're in it, they're like, okay, you know what? I want to be electrical. Like, they're very similar. I've decided I want no more programming. But sometimes they decide this in April. So they're like, all right, it's too late to drop the class. Like, what can I do? I'm going to change my major. In that case, we could definitely talk about pass no crediting the class because that student is now going to be in a major where this class in question, data structures, would be a free elective. So again, pass no credit is a little bit limited in how you can use it, but again, talk to your hub advisor. You have to anyway, because we have to sign a form to do it. But again, depending on the situation, there are sometimes some cool things we can do. Now, that does remind me one last thing before I leave this slide, kind of going back to the drop deadline. A question we often get is, like, what happens after the drop deadline? What if we get past the drop deadline and I get my second exam grade back and I just realize it is bad news? So you can theoretically, potentially, drop a class late, but the process becomes a bit messier. So what would happen is you would need to reach out to ALAC, the Advising and Learning Assistance Center, and talk to them about asking if they would grant a late drop. It is up to their discretion. They're not usually terrible about it, but it's no longer a guarantee at that point. And then also, if you drop late, it will show up on your transcript. So it will usually just have a W, which means withdrawal. It has no negative GPA impact, and it's not a big deal if it's something that happens like once or twice. The main thing is you just don't want to make a pattern of that. So that is advising tips. So again, I will be brief on the campus resources because if you've been reading your hidden curriculum episodes, then there's a lot more information about every one of these in there, but quick rundown. So first and most obvious option to help you in your classes is campus tutoring services and office hours. So quick refresher, office hours can be found in your syllabus. There will likely be office hours for both TAs and professors. And then ALAC also runs drop-in tutoring on WebEx. And the link, if you just Google RPI ALAC tutoring, you'll be able to find this no problem. I heard they literally updated it this morning, so all the spring courses should be live if you've been wanting to kind of get in for some of your classes. So tutoring and office hours are really great if you're struggling with the actual class content. So struggling with how to do a derivative or struggling to see how protein folding works in your bio class. If you're struggling more with the skills like time management, study skills, things like that, then the resource you're going to want to check out is academic coaching, which is in ALAC as well. So for those who haven't done it before, academic coaching is one-on-one with a professional staff member, just like your hub advisor, and they can work on things with you like learning strategies, time management, and organizational skills. These are things that we see a lot in people's first year because, again, if we look back at the typical RPI student coming out of high school, sometimes the study skills didn't really have to be that strong for you to be doing well. And obviously that tends to change once you're here. So if you find yourself struggling with some of the more like extraneous skills that you need to do well in classes, this would be an excellent resource to tap into. Then this is probably the most underutilized resource on campus, but Center for Global Communication and Design, or also known as ComD, is a great resource for any sort of communication project, and they define that very broadly. So that could be a paper you're writing, a presentation you have to give, but also it could be how you're visualizing data or doing a graphic design project. They're very, very open to what sorts of content they will review for you. Now, with all the online stuff, they have this really great option where, first of all, you can just have like a one-on-one appointment hanging out in WebEx like this, talking about your project, but they also have an option for asynchronous feedback. So basically, let's say I have a paper due on Thursday. If I can get it done by Tuesday and upload it to ComD for that asynchronous feedback, I can get like a free review on how to make my paper better before I submit it. So with that option on deck, where you don't even have to like schedule out room on your calendar, I think there's no reason not to, right? So highly recommend checking them out. And last but not least, I always like to bring up that we have a disability services office. So something that's not always realized is that if you had an IEP or different disability accommodations in high school, so maybe things like extended time on exams or designated note taker, things like that, that can often translate into college. So if this is something that applies to you and you weren't aware that that was an option, or maybe in the fall you were like, oh, maybe I just don't think I need it, I don't want it, and now you're kind of changing your mind about it, totally fine. Email dss@rpi.edu and they can help out with letting you know what next steps are in terms of documentation, getting everything set up, and things like that. So again, Hidden Curriculum episodes 7 and 8 are the ones that really dive deep into these campus resources. So if you have more questions about it, it's all on the website, probably 20 emails in your inbox, so you can find it there. So one thing I'm very big on is action steps. Like, yes, you've told me all this stuff. What do I do with it? How do I make this work? So today I want to walk through some organizational ideas and some tools that are free to use that you can try if you don't already have a system that works for you. So first thing I recommend students do every single semester in the first week or two of classes is to just mark up your syllabus left and right. So highlight test dates, highlight any due dates for things like homeworks or lab reports, anything you have to hand in, any presentations, things like that. Because basically you just need to know what you need to do. Like that is level 1 before we can start organizing how we're going to get it done. So Go through, read everything twice, highlight it all, make sure it's all accounted for. Then you're going to want to create one centralized place to hold all of this information. It is very, very, very rare to find someone who can effectively keep that all just up in their brain and never miss anything going forward. So in terms of what that place looks like for you, there is no best. It is what you will use and what makes sense. So some of the most common options, obviously planners are very popular. You can usually have little calendars and also weekly breakdowns that can be helpful. Wall calendars can be really popular as well. So this was something I was very big on in college. I had a huge dry erase calendar on my wall. And the reason I really liked that was when I could write all the due dates for the month in one big centralized place, it kind of helped me see ahead of time where the pain points could be. So I could see like, oh gosh, okay, in the third week of the month, I have like 2 exams and a paper and a lab report due. Okay, good. If I know that ahead of time, then I can really start to kind of get more strategic about planning when I'm going to write that paper and how I'm going to schedule my study time. Then something we're going to go through in just a moment is a rundown of some digital calendar and different types of organization apps. Again, the technological world. So if this works for you, we're going to run through it. And again, this part really just comes down to whatever works. Odds are very high that you need to do something if you aren't already, but as long as you'll use it, that's what matters. So maybe one less typical example I can think of is in undergrad, my husband wasn't super strong with organization in the first year or so. And by junior year, he found what really worked for him was he would go through in the beginning of the semester, do all this stuff, highlighting test dates, all that. And then he would write each thing that he had to do, whether it was an exam or something he had to hand in, on a Post-it. And he just covered his wall in those Post-its. And every time he finished something, he would rip the Post-it off the wall. And it helped him keep it all in one spot. And there was kind of the satisfaction in being able to rip things off the wall once you were done with them. So again, let's talk about some digital options because they are free. And again, it's just to kind of get some ideas flowing if you don't already have a system that you like. So obviously RPI has Roundcube and not Gmail, which I'm very sorry. Roundcube looks difficult. But obviously anybody can make a Gmail account. They are free. If you already have one, you can use it. And one thing we've noticed this year is a lot of people just kind of haven't gotten beyond the mail app and realize some of the other things that are built in. So first, we're going to do a quick tutorial of Google Calendar. And for fun, I actually dug back and found out that mine from undergrad has not been canceled. So we're going to look at a week in the life of Cara as a junior in college. And this week is actually a really good example because it shows a couple of different functions that Google Calendar can offer you. So first and foremost, I would recommend if you want to kind of use this sort of week at a glance calendar to organize yourself, first set up your recurring events. So for me, that was classes. So I have like my 2 psychology seminars, I had 2 health and wellness courses, and then also I was working 2 jobs that semester. So you could see I was tutoring for 8 hours a week, and I was doing Discovery, which was an advising internship, foreshadowing, 10 hours a week. So to put those in, obviously you could add a title. And when I sat down at the beginning of the semester, basically I would put in the time slot for the class, and then there's a spot where you can set it to repeat. So obviously you can put one-off things, which I'll show in a second, but you could hit does not repeat and it won't do that. You could have something repeat daily, weekly, or in this case, the custom button made it so I could do, all right, this is weekly, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I set it to end on the last day of classes for that semester. So that was all the information that I felt I needed, but you have the option to put in more. So if I want to remember where that class is, I could say, all right, that was in the JEC on campus. If I want a reminder before the event, I can set my phone to give me a notification however many days, weeks, minutes before the event. And then also there's this box here where you could type anything that you might need. So that is recurring events. And for myself, I liked to color code them so I saw which things were related and went together. And then also you can have one-off events. So they're really easy to add. You literally just click anywhere on the calendar, and then you could put like, this will be my workouts time, and you can just save it and it's there. So you can see that's what I did for some of these office hours I went to. There was like a meeting or two on this night apparently. And once you have like the recurring things like your classes and those one-off events like office hours where you have to physically go or log on to something, from here you can mark it up as much as you want. So if you're looking at all this and then you're like, okay, well, how does this translate? Like, I've got so much stuff to do this week. Well, now you can start breaking it down more. So let's say I knew, all right, I've got a paper due for my cognitive approaches of artificial intelligence class later this week. And I'm gonna spend like 2 hours before dinner, like research sources for cog sci paper. And you can do this as little or as much as you find helpful. So we've covered recurring events, one-off events. Another thing you can do is all-day events. So if you want big projects or tests or something to show up when you bump out the calendar to a monthly view, all you got to do is click on a day, and let's say this will be like a Chem 1100 exam. Oh, for some reason, it set itself up to be at 11 a.m. But hey, now I can show you, you can always edit an event. So if it has a time and you don't want it to, just check all day. And now it's just flagged on the calendar as a reminder. So lots of different ways you can use Google Calendar. And again, something that I still use to this day as an adult is that you can set up those reminders with notifications. So if, for example, you were going to this chem exam and you were like, oh God, I have to go buy more pencils for my Scantron or something, you can always remind yourself and then go to more options. And then you can add your notification and it'll pop up on your phone, pop up on the calendar if you're in your email, things like that. So Google Calendar, great place to start and kind of get your meetings, your classes, and all of that into one place. Then there's this new tool that I literally learned about like a week ago, and we are going to talk about Google Keep. Or no, sorry, Google Tasks. So new. So the way you find this is if you're in your Gmail inbox, then you can click on tasks and you can see that there's going to be a lot of different things we can do with this. So you can always just type random tasks here. So you can put like do laundry, call my mom. It can be just as basic as that. But where you can start getting really more technical with it is if you start building out new lists. So here I made a list for Chem 1100. If I want to make a new list, I can do that. And then from here, you can add different tasks and start to kind of plan things out on a more micro level. So let's say I have exam 2 coming up. So I have the option to add dates and times. So let's say it's the 18th at 7 p.m., making things up. So I could say, all right, that's the big event here. And then if I go back to the list, this is the main way it would look. But I can also add subtasks to getting there. So I could say, all right, I need to do practice problems for chapter 5. I need to go to study group meeting. Go to study group meeting Wednesday at 6. Any number of things. And again, these can also be assigned dates and times and things like that. So something that I think could be really helpful, and we've seen some students do, is if you really want to just get in there at the beginning of the semester and kind of make an action plan for everything, then you could go ahead and say, all right, let me get together everything I need for a specific week in a class. So let's say I'm looking, all right, what needs to happen in Chem 1100 next week? So I could say, all right, I need to read chapter 2 before lecture. I need to submit homework 3 by 6 p.m. Friday. and I need to upload lab report by 7 p.m. Thursday. And this can be a way where either do this weekly, so sit down at the beginning of each week, look at those due dates from each class and be like, all right, let me make a plan of all the little tangibles I need done this week. Or if you're just feeling like real bored in quarantine and want something to do, you really could go and break this out for the whole semester. So now when I come back to the main Chem 1100 list, it's all kind of just branched under here nicely. Now, another cool thing that you can do with this is it can be a nice way to keep information about a task with it by dragging your emails. So let's say I wanted to meet with my Chem 1100 study group, and that email included like whose WebEx link we're using, right? So here we're meeting in my WebEx room. And if I want to have that all in one spot, I can just click and drag this email over here, and now it's made a task item. And then let's say I want to clean up my inbox and be like, all right, that's going in the Chem 1100 folder. That's fine. I can still find this so easily. If I click on it, it immediately takes me to that email. And then again, just as another example, let's say you're preparing for your SAM meeting. Very important. Then I could say, all right, let me start by dragging the email. And then I'm going to rename it Book SAM Meeting with Cara. And now when I go to do that, I could say, all right, I booked with her, and then there was stuff she said I needed to do. All right, it's all right here. So again, even though unfortunately Gmail is not the client for RPI, you could always make a free account. We've heard a lot of students will sometimes just auto forward their entire RPI email address to a Gmail account. But if you wanted to use this email click and drag, obviously you could always just forward specific emails that matter. So basically the long and short of it is it doesn't matter much how you organize, but whether it's pen and paper, something on a wall, or something on Google here, there are a lot of free options that can really help get a workflow established. So with that being said, thank you all for joining me tonight, and just want to say that you've got this. And if you ever have any questions or need any help, obviously every Hub advisor always welcomes you to email us, make appointments, things like that.